In today's world, family business is becoming more and more of a novel concept. But at Koelsch Communities, the rare culture of family, hard work, and integrity is alive and well. One of the many reasons why the levels of excellence at Koelsch are so high. They are a direct reflection of the Koelsch family and their values that now span 3 generations of the senior housing industry. But to understand this, you have to understand the family story. It all began in 1876. A young German immigrant named Frank Kern came to America to help farmstead his brother's land in Great Bend, Kansas. Starting out with nothing but a couple tools and a cow, Frank lived in a dugout for 3 years while he farmed the land, until he got himself settled with a house, a wife, and a family. Then, in 1911, Emil Koelsch, another young German immigrant, found his way to Middle America in Great Bend, Kansas. In need of work, Emil serendipitously crossed paths with Frank Kern. Though Frank couldn't help much, he knew both men were from close neighboring towns in Germany. So he offered a helping hand, giving Emil a place to stay and some work in the farm sandpit. And it was there at the farm where Emil got to know Frank's youngest daughter, Elizabeth. He soon married her, took over the farm, and had 5 children of his own. He never left till the day he died. And of the 5 children, there was Morris, Emmett, Vic, Mary Lou, and Rose. Until one day, the second-born, Emmett, decided to leave the farm in a lark at just 17 years old.
His friend invited him to go along the trip to see his uncle in Longview, Washington. And so in the car, they jumped and they took off one afternoon. And on the way out of town, the friend said, "Hey, Em, I want to stop by and see my girlfriend on the way out of town." And my dad said, "Hey, that's great. It's your trip. I'll follow you." So into the house he went to see his girlfriend. My dad said, "I waited and I waited and I waited." He said 5 hours later, he said, the guy came out of the house and he said, "Emmett," he said, "we've decided to get married. And she's going to come along with us." Off to the courthouse they went. My dad stood up for him. They all 3 jumped to the car, and down the road they went west. They got there, and my dad found work immediately at a farm, milking cows out in Lexington, Washington, just real close to Longview. My dad had continued to find employment. His parents kept writing him, say, "Hey, Emmett, come home, and maybe it's time to come home." He kind of kept finding excuses not to come home. So they packed up the 4 siblings, and out to Longview, Washington they came. His dad just bought a new car, a Packard. It was a big deal, because when they showed up in Longview, Washington, they were driving a new Packard car. My dad said, "Oh, Aaron, that car was a beautiful thing." And they said, "Emmett, if you come back with us, you can drive the car all the way home." And he said, Oh, I wanted to drive that car all the way home." He said, "I was so tempted." I said, "Why didn't you?" And he goes, "Well, I love my mom and dad, and I miss my siblings like crazy." He said, "But I just liked the independence, and I liked Washington." And I cried for an hour watching them go down the road. He said, "Then I dried up my tears and went back to my room," and he goes, "I didn't really largely give it a thought after that." He walked into a diner one day, saw a nice-looking lady, young girl behind the counter by the name of Alice McCormick. Their first date was recorded as being a drive to the county dump, where he shone his lights on a pile of trash, and he pulled a .22 out of the back seat, and they shot rats for their first date because they virtually had no money. That's a true story.
The connection between Alice and Emmett grew, and it burgeoned into a marriage. Ultimately, it became a lifetime partnership of family and work that could not be rivaled by many others. Soon after their marriage, Emmett was called into service. World War II was coming into full swing. He played a vital role in the Pacific Theater aboard the destroyer USS Roberts. Many stories live to this day in the family of his time on the ship, managing the 3-inch barreled gun on the front deck. After coming home from the war, Emmett and Alice's family grew. 4 girls, Nancy, Peggy, Kathy, Sally, and then a baby boy, Aaron. It was around this time that Emmett got a job at Reynolds Metals Aluminum Factory in Longview, Washington. There he thrived and succeeded as a manager and foreman, working there ultimately for 21 years.
He loved that job. He said, Aaron, that was the best job I ever had. And he goes, I was really good at it. He goes, I got it. I really got it.
Both Emmett and Alice did what they could to make ends meet beyond their salaries. It was only their faith that decided where they were headed was a future of family business.
They became Seventh-day Adventist Christians, and as such, they were guarding their Saturdays very, very carefully. But the mill could not get him his regular Saturdays off as he had requested. So they began to look for a business that they could own themselves.
My parents had been doing all kinds of things, from selling used cars to working in candy shops and being an LPN and many things. One day I came home and they'd sold our house. And they sold it because they'd found an old broken down empty nursing home that they wanted to try to come back to life again and get into the nursing home business.
A lady by the name of Mrs. St. John, and she was willing to sell the old building to my parents for $50,000. That was a lot of money back then. And there was nobody in their right mind that was going to lend my parents $50,000. So they talked Mrs. St. John into carrying the note. She became the bank, so to speak, on that little nursing home called the Monticello Hall. It's been around 50 years since we've all been at the former Monticello Hall here together in one spot.
And only 2 people are missing, Mom and Dad.
Yep.
They moved all of their kids into the basement of that first nursing home. About a year and a half or so later, I was born, and so I was born in the basement of a nursing home, is my story.
Right, yeah.
Oh man, I have rounded this corner. I remember distinctly, this is how we'd come in.
We had a table right here, and then Mom would bring food down from upstairs, and this was our dining area.
Which they wouldn't let you do now.
I was 11 years old when Mom and Dad bought the Monticello Hall. We lived in the basement. There were 3 bedrooms down there. One was the living room, one was the bedroom for all of us girls, and one was Mom and Dad's bedroom.
And Sally and I had beds on either side of this window. And we remember crawling out the window to meet Madeline outside.
Yeah.
We'd just open the window and go outside. You know, what is there, 700 or 800 square feet down here?
Not very much.
Total?
And a tiny bathroom.
That was sacrifice.
Wow. You have a plan and a dream, and you're willing to work hard. Go for it.
Right. But you know, I don't remember ever feeling
Me neither.
like we were doing without, or somehow we were less than anyone else. This was just, felt great. I mean,
It was home.
So I'm Sally Ziprick, and I am the 4th child of Emmett and Alice Koelsch, or the youngest daughter. The residents were my childhood friends. I remember Madeline and Thelma and Huey and Gloria, particularly Madeline. She was an Indian woman who I don't think had a last name. She was mute, and yet I was able to communicate with her.
I actually have baby blankets that were made by residents here.
oh, sure.
That were for our child.
Oh,
You still
yeah.
have them?
Wow.
Through high school, we had summer jobs working there, and then when our boyfriends would come home for weekend vacations, they got to work the first half of the day in the facility. Eventually, my boyfriend and I married, and my husband learned the business from my parents.
They filled that first nursing home up and then realized we were living in revenue-bearing space, and you can't do that. They put a single-wide trailer right against the wall in front of me here, and I remember distinctly that the hallways were so narrow that my sister Sally and I had to turn sideways to get down the hallway.
Over the next 15 years, Emmett and Alice bought or built almost all of the nursing homes in Cowlitz County, including the new nursing home that Mrs. St. John had built across town. And in 1971, they began to develop a groundbreaking concept.
I remember around dinner tables conversations about a new idea, about an idea for people who didn't need to live in a nursing home but could not live independently on their own. Something we call assisted living today, but that term was not developed then. But they came up with the concept and built a community called the Delaware Plaza.
By the time it started, I was married and had a family, and when I heard about my parents wanting to do this adventure, I thought, oh, how can they do that? It's expensive, it's a gamble, what are they doing?
And from day one, that was a success, where we offered meals and housekeeping and some medication management. It was the first purpose-built assisted living community that I'm aware of anywhere in the state of Washington, perhaps anywhere in the country.
All their lives, they've been hardworking, industrious, ingenious, really.
And I just have thought how much I've appreciated just the atmosphere in which we worked. Mom and Dad's can-do attitude has just been a tremendous blessing to me.
One summer, it was my job as activities director to load this van up and take them to doctor's appointments or whatever. On the first day, I pulled out of the driveway and I clipped the first car I could and tore off the bumper. And with it loaded with the patients. And I was like mortified. So I ran in, told my dad what I had done, and he was super gracious. That's okay, we'll just tear the bumper off and I'll talk to the people. It was no big deal.
And that was Dad, right?
That was Dad. He was always pretty gracious.
Yeah, which is just our dad, making people are more important than things. That was always my dad's mantra.
Over the course of time, Emmett and Alice's partnership in business grew as they expanded across Washington state. And when it came time to plan for their retirement, the couple sold all of the facilities to their 5 children, giving each of the children some seed money that they could, in turn, use to start a business of their own.
At that time, I had graduated from college and had taken a job in Chicago, Illinois with a company back there. After 4+ years with that organization, we decided to start our own company. And so in 1988, I left Wisconsin. We moved to Southern California, where we built our first community in a town called Victorville, California. We built the Sterling Inn, which is still in our portfolio to this day, and we're very proud of it.
Slowly building upon the success of Sterling Inn, Aaron began to build what is considered today Koelsch Communities. With his wife Judy by his side, the couple expanded their business back into Washington state, where they began to operate the very buildings that Emmett and Alice had built before them. With a desire to differentiate themselves from the rest of the industry, Judy Koelsch took a unique approach to interior design. By using historical photos, artwork, and local decor, she created a backdrop of nostalgia for residents to live and exist in a home-like environment. Bit by bit, Aaron grew the company to greater heights, expanding the business into new markets, building upon its rich history. Koelsch Communities now operates independent living, assisted living, and memory care communities in almost every major city across the western United States. Today, Koelsch Communities continues to be very much a family-run organization. We are proud of what we do here and grateful for the opportunity to do it. That's why we honor those who have come before us, paving a way for success through character, integrity, work ethic, attention to detail, and ultimately a love for our residents and staff. For after all, we here at Koelsch are just ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.